In the pursuit of knowledge, we often see a noble quest, a journey toward progress and a better future. But what happens when that journey loses its way? When the thirst for discovery overshadows the value of human life? History holds a quiet, unsettling answer. It tells us that some of our greatest leaps in understanding came at a staggering, unspoken cost, paid by those who had no choice. This is the story of a time when science operated in the shadows, without a moral compass, and the profound lessons we were forced to learn from it. There was an era, not so long ago, when the concept of ethical research was still in its infancy. The idea that a patient or a subject must give their full, informed consent was not a universal standard. In the eyes of some researchers, individuals could be seen merely as tools for discovery, their rights secondary to the pursuit of a greater scientific good. This mindset laid a dangerous foundation. It created a world where the line between healing and harm could become perilously blurred, where the vulnerable were not protected but targeted, all under the banner of progress. It was a time of immense scientific ambition, but one that lacked a crucial component, a conscience. This dangerous potential was fully unleashed during periods of global conflict. In times of war, national survival and ideological victory become paramount. Fear and urgency can suspend normal moral reasoning. In this charged environment, research programs emerged that pushed far beyond any acceptable ethical boundary. Driven by military objectives and fueled by dehumanizing propaganda, these studies were conducted far from public view. The goal was not to heal, but to gain an advantage, no matter the human toll. The pressures of war created a space where the unthinkable became possible, and where scientific inquiry was weaponized against human beings. The focus shifted from understanding the body to controlling it, from preserving life to exploiting it. As the world moved into the tense standoff of the Cold War, the nature of this research shifted again, retreating deeper into the shadows. Governments, obsessed with national security and ideological competition, sponsored covert programs shrouded in secrecy. These studies often explored the frontiers of the human mind, seeking ways to influence or control behavior. The participants were frequently unaware they were part of an experiment at all. There was no consent, no transparency, and no accountability. The very institutions meant to protect citizens were sometimes the ones sanctioning these violations. This era of secrecy created a deep chasm between the state and its people, where trust was eroded and the truth was a casualty. The lack of oversight allowed these programs to continue for years, their existence a closely guarded secret, their consequences buried in classified files. So, who paid the price for this unchecked pursuit of knowledge? Overwhelmingly, it was the most vulnerable members of society. Experiments were disproportionately conducted on prisoners, orphans, psychiatric patients, and marginalized communities. These were people with little to no power to resist, often living within institutions that held total control over their lives. They were chosen precisely because they were voiceless, their suffering unlikely to be heard or believed. For these individuals, the impact was devastating and lifelong. The physical and psychological scars endured for generations. Entire communities were left with a legacy of distrust toward medical and governmental institutions, a wound that, in many places, has yet to fully heal. Their stories are a stark reminder that when ethics are abandoned, it is always the powerless who suffer most. For decades, an official silence surrounded these events. The victims were ignored, their experiences dismissed or actively covered up. Many went to their graves without ever receiving an apology or even an acknowledgement of what had been done to them. It was often thanks to the tireless work of journalists, whistleblowers, and survivor advocacy groups that the truth began to surface, decades after the fact. Public hearings and declassified documents slowly painted a horrifying picture of systemic abuse disguised as science. This slow, painful process of revelation forced a global reckoning. Societies were forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that these were not isolated incidents, but patterns of behavior enabled by flawed systems and a profound lack of ethical oversight. Justice, when it came at all, was tragically delayed. The exposure of these historical abuses sent shockwaves through the scientific and medical communities. It became undeniably clear that an informal sense of morality was not enough. In response, a new and robust framework of ethical standards was born. Codes like the Nuremberg Code and the Declaration of Helsinki were established, creating strict, universal rules for human research. At their core was the non-negotiable principle of informed consent. No one should ever be subjected to an experiment without their full knowledge and willing participation. Independent review boards were created to scrutinize research proposals, ensuring that the rights and welfare of participants are the absolute top priority. These safeguards, born from tragedy, are now the bedrock of modern research, a firewall designed to prevent history from repeating itself. Reflecting on this dark chapter forces us to confront fundamental questions. It reveals the inherent tension between the quest for scientific knowledge and the preservation of human dignity. It teaches us that power without accountability is a recipe for disaster. The researchers and officials involved were not necessarily monsters. They were often ordinary people who, through a combination of ambition, ideology, and institutional pressure, made catastrophic moral compromises. Their story is a powerful lesson on how easily ethical lines can be crossed when we begin to see other people as means to an end, rather than as ends in themselves. It underscores the vital importance of empathy, critical thinking, and a steadfast commitment to human rights in every field of endeavor. Even today, many questions remain. How many programs are still hidden in classified archives? How many victims have yet to have their stories told? The full extent of what happened may never be known. But this uncertainty does not diminish the importance of remembering. We must continue to study this history, not for morbid curiosity, but for the vital warnings it contains. It reminds us that scientific advancement must always be guided by a strong moral framework. It teaches us to be vigilant, to question authority, and to advocate for transparency and accountability in all institutions of power. Remembering is an act of respect for the victims and a pledge to future generations. History is not merely a collection of stories from the past. It is a mirror held up to the present. The shadows of these experiments serve as a permanent reminder of our capacity for both great discovery and great cruelty. They warn us that progress without compassion is not progress at all. By remembering the cost, by honoring the victims, we reaffirm our commitment to a future where science serves humanity, and where the dignity of every individual is held sacred. Thank you for joining us on this solemn reflection. Please consider subscribing to learn more about the lessons history has to teach us.